Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a company called Ascend Consulting Group. If you're navigating the sometimes tricky world of business support, especially maybe outside the big city centers, this one's definitely for you. We've pulled together info from their website, looked at their services, the team, and some interesting blog posts they've written, like Building Rural Business, and others called Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and From Conversation to Clarity. So, our mission here really is to get a good, clear picture of Ascend. What do they actually do? How did they start? What specific help can they offer? And maybe the most interesting part, how do they say they're different from, the standard business consulting agencies? It's about giving you the context, so if you're thinking about getting support or even just curious about different ways of doing business consulting, you've got a better handle on it.
Yeah, and that context piece is so important, isn't it? Choosing who you work with, especially for something like consulting, it's a big deal. Understanding not just the list of services, but where they come from, their philosophy, who they really set out to help, that helps you figure out if it's like a genuine fit. Do they actually get your world?
Absolutely. So let's kick things off. At its core, who is Ascend Consulting Group? What's the main idea?
Well, based on what they say, the fundamental idea is providing strategic support, technology, and guidance. Pretty standard sounding so far, maybe. But the really key part, the thing that jumps out, is who they're aiming to help. They specifically mention rural and community-based entrepreneurs, startups, social enterprises, nonprofits, and indigenous businesses. And Graham McLeod's profile specifically mentions a focus on Saskatchewan businesses. So that really grounds it. They're not trying to be everything to everyone. They seem very focused on a group that, well, often gets overlooked by the bigger players.
Okay, that focus is interesting. And their origin story sounds pretty unique, too. You mentioned it doesn't start with Ascend itself, but with something called Rise Up Community Advisory Foundation. What was that about?
Right, Rise Up. Yeah, that was apparently a really grassroots thing. The focus was all about making lasting change within communities. Things like leadership development, community safety initiatives, economic empowerment projects, reconciliation efforts. And sounds like it was really about long-term transformation, building from the ground up, not just quick fixes. Very much rooted in place and relationships.
Okay, a community-focused, long-term change initiative. How does that lead to a business consulting firm? Seems like quite a jump.
Well, that's kind of the core of their story, it seems.
Yeah.
Through doing all that work with Rise Up, being deeply involved in those grassroots communities and businesses, a pattern started to emerge. They kept seeing the same sorts of barriers holding businesses back again and again. Things like needing more inclusive ways of leading, a real lack of accessible expertise, getting good advice without a huge price tag, and just not enough strategic support that actually fit the reality of a small local business.
And is that where the founders' own backgrounds come into play, bridging that gap?
Exactly. The founders, they had all this experience from the corporate world running big HR projects, complex international stuff, coaching executives. They saw this need in the communities and realized, hey, the skills we have, this big picture thinking, it's needed here, but it's just not getting here. So the idea became, how do we take that corporate level insight and make it work for local solutions? How do we translate it and tailor it for, say, a rural entrepreneur or a small nonprofit?
Right. So Ascend Consulting wasn't just like, let's start a consulting business. It grew directly out of seeing that community need, aiming to make that higher level expertise accessible to businesses that maybe traditional firms wouldn't usually focus on.
Precisely. It's framed as an extension of that community work, just using different tools, business strategy, technology, that kind of thing.
Okay, let's talk about the people then, the founders. The sources mention Graham McLeod and Laura Nicolat. What can you tell us about Graham?
Graham McLeod, yeah. He brings almost 20 years of experience, mostly in business operations, IT infrastructure, sales leadership. He's been in senior management, board roles at some pretty big names: Apple, TELUS, Y-Band, Switch Inc. His expertise seems to be around simplifying complex stuff, building systems that can scale, leading changes driven by technology. But what the sources emphasize is his, quote, practical, grounded approach, especially geared for Saskatchewan businesses, making things actually work on the ground.
Practical and grounded, okay. And Laura Nicolat.
Laura Nicolat. She's described as a strategic HR consultant and also a courage curator, which is an interesting title.
It is.
Her focus is business transformation, leadership development, change management. Again, extensive corporate background. TC Energy, Deloitte, Agrium Nutrient across Canada and the U.S. So she's about aligning the people side of things, teams, leadership development, with where the business needs to go. And here's the key connection. The sources highlight she founded Rise Up and co-founded Ascend.
Ah, okay.
That really brings that blend of corporate expertise and community understanding right into the firm's DNA.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like their combined backgrounds are the engine here, taking that big company experience and making it work, making it accessible for local businesses and organizations.
They really seem to embody that bridge they're trying to build.
So what are the actual services? How do they help businesses day to day? The sources list quite a range.
Yeah, they do. They group them into a few main buckets. There's technology and modernization, then business and leadership consulting, sales and growth strategy, workshops and facilitation, and then this other category they just call other services.
Okay, let's break those down a bit. Technology and modernization, what falls under that?
So this is about helping businesses use tech effectively. Things like smart tools and setup, basically finding and implementing the right software or systems for them. Digital presence and branding is in there too, so building websites, managing social media, making sure they look professional and can actually be found online. And business automations, that could mean setting up more efficient ways to work, or even using AI tools like custom chatbots, maybe for customer service or handling routine tasks, using tech to save time and reach more people.
Right. And the business and leadership category.
Under that, they list things like HR on call, which sounds like flexible HR support for businesses that don't need a full-time HR person.
That sounds useful.
Yeah. Leader coaching to help owners grow and make better decisions. And meeting facilitation, helping make important meetings actually productive. Then for sales and growth, it's what you'd expect, helping develop sales strategies, setting up customer management solutions, CRM systems, and creating marketing solutions. And their workshops cover things like competency and team building and change management.
One thing that caught my eye, that the sources say they describe these services in both plain English and corporate terms. What does that tell you?
Oh, I thought that was really revealing too. It speaks volumes about who they're trying to reach and their whole mission of accessibility, doesn't it?
Yeah.
They clearly understand that not everyone walking through their door, so to speak, has an MBA or comes from a corporate background. So by offering both ways of describing things, they make it clearer, less intimidating. It signals they're meeting people where they are language-wise, fits perfectly with their community roots.
Makes sense. Now, what about that other services category? That seemed a bit different.
Yeah, that one is their on-demand admin and bookkeeping service. They frame it specifically as bringing corporate-level support for rural businesses. The idea is, why shouldn't smaller, rural businesses have access to the same quality admin and bookkeeping help that big companies get? But crucially, they need it affordably and flexibly.
Okay, so how does that admin on-demand service actually work?
Well, they mentioned partnering with trusted providers for the actual VA and bookkeeping work. But the key thing is that Ascend manages the service. They offer these flexible packages you can buy just 1 hour, or a 5-hour pack, or a 10-hour pack, and the hourly rate goes down. They list the prices: $29, $25, and $22 per hour, respectively.
Interesting pricing model.
Yeah, very transparent. And they stress it's an integrated team. So the person helping with your admin might be connected to the folks working on your website or strategy. They understand the whole picture of your business. And really, when you look at all the services together, the tech help, the CRM, the admin support, it all seems to point back to that goal they state: helping businesses connect better with customers and build stronger relationships. Whether that's through a better website, smoother operations, or better customer service using things like chatbots, or just having your admin under control. They mention clients like Haywire Farm Festival and Fresh Threads Laundry Service, which kind of brings it down to earth, real local businesses.
Right. So putting it all together, how does Ascend really differentiate itself? What makes them stand out from a more, let's say, traditional consulting firm?
I think a few key things really emerge from the sources. First, obviously, that origin story. Coming out of Rise Up gives them this built-in understanding and commitment to businesses that other firms just might not have on their radar. Their whole mission is explicitly about making expert help accessible, inclusive, and grounded in values, not just profit. They talk about it as bridging big picture strategy, that insight from the corporate world with local impact, making it actually work on the ground in a community context. Their leadership style is described as community-centered, embedding things like equity, inclusion, reconciliation. And practically speaking, those accessible, affordable support models like the admin on demand are designed to meet clients where they are, not force them into some rigid, expensive engagement. It feels like they're aiming for real transformation, as they put it, not just reports that sit on a shelf.
And the sources kept mentioning their process, starting with a conversation to clarity. How does that fit into this difference?
Yeah, that seems absolutely central to their method. They're very clear. They don't start with templates or jargon or ready-made solutions.
Right.
It begins with a real conversation. Might be over coffee, might be a call. It's built on listening,
Hmm.
really listening. They want to understand the client's passion, their purpose, their values, even their worries and hesitations.
Hmm.
Ascend's role, as they describe it, is to listen so deeply they can essentially reflect the client's own vision back to them, but in a clearer, more organized, stronger way.
So it's less about them coming in saying, here's what you should do, and more about helping the client articulate their own best path forward.
Exactly. They say this leads to a plan that feels authentic and doable for the client, which makes sense, right? It reduces that feeling of being overwhelmed.
Hmm.
And crucially, they say their support doesn't stop with the plan. They stick around to help implement it, setting priorities, building the systems, developing the brand. It's about actually turning those ideas from the conversation into reality.
This all feels very targeted. So if you are that rural entrepreneur, or you're leading a nonprofit in a smaller town, or maybe launching a startup outside a big city, why should this Ascend approach matter specifically to you?
Because their whole model seems designed specifically to tackle the hurdles that businesses like yours often face. That Building Rural Business Source talks about them.
Mhm.
Smaller markets, maybe tighter resources, less access to specialized expertise just because of distance, sometimes slower tech adoption.
Right, those are common challenges. So how does Ascend help with those directly?
Well, their strategy service aims to give you a roadmap that's tailored to you and your community, not some generic plan, leveraging your actual strengths. Their tech services offer affordable ways to expand your reach beyond your town, like with a good website or social media, and tools to streamline how you work, making the most of limited resources. And the guidance and support part. It offers that partner, someone who gets the challenges, can help you see blind spots, and just generally makes you feel less alone in figuring it all out. They're essentially bringing that high-level capability right to your doorstep, but in a way that's practical, affordable, and understands your reality. The message seems to be, you don't need to be in a major city to build something great.
Okay, so we've done a pretty deep dive here into Ascend Consulting Group. We've looked at how their unusual roots in community work really shape this consulting model that's focused on accessible, values-driven support, especially for rural and emerging businesses. We've explored their services from strategy and tech down to HR and even that on-demand admin help. And we've heard about the founders who bring that really interesting mix of big corporate experience and local understanding.
Yeah, and their whole approach really seems to challenge the norm, doesn't it? Starting with conversation, not templates, translating passion into a plan, and just emphasizing that good business support shouldn't depend on your location or your budget, making success feel possible wherever you are.
That idea that you can have sophisticated strategic support that's also genuinely accessible and grounded in community values,
Hmm.
that feels pretty powerful,
Mhm.
especially for businesses that might have felt left out before.
It definitely raises a question for you listening to this. If you are navigating those unique challenges of growing a business or an organization in a smaller community, feeling some of those pressures we talked about, what kind of support would actually make you feel equipped? What would empower you to take that next big step?
Think about the specific hurdles you're facing right now. Is it getting online effectively? Is it managing the day-to-day admin? Is it getting clear on your strategy? Considering Ascend's story and their focus on conversation, accessibility, and values, what part of their approach stands out to you? What might actually make a tangible difference in your own journey?